Real fight! Real fight! Real fight! Hate to break it to you boxers and diehard boxing fans, but MMA is that real fighting shit. Oh no, man. What about guns, though? What about knives and steel pipes, bro? What about knives and glass bottles? You know, gang attacks, too. Real fights ain't got no time limits, bro. Life or death. Life or death. You know, for hundreds of years, people far and wide have called boxing a real fight. Real men just throw the hands, bro. Just throw hands, man. Fuck that. Fuck that. But now that mainstream MMA has taken the world by storm, boxers want to claim that neither MMA nor boxing is a real fight. Or why you want to say boxing ain't a real fight now? Is it because you know that MMA is closer to a real fight than boxing will ever be? But fear and jealousy makes you not wanting to give credit where credit is due? Within the realm of combat sports, MMA has earned the title of as real as it gets. MMA has earned the title of real fight. So you'd rather say that neither boxing nor MMA are real fights because you know that if you continue to call boxing a real fight, you'd have to, at minimum, call MMA the realer fight. I repeat, the realer fight. But your jealousy and inferiority complex just can't let you admit that, can it? Typical knuckle draggers of the observable universe. Defiant to a fault. Face it, in unarmed combat, an MMA skill set has the upper hand, bottom line. And deep down, boxers know this. Which is why whenever the MMA versus boxing debate comes up, all of a sudden boxers want to start talking about guns, bets, and gang attacks and shit. It's like, you know, I always thought that it went without saying that whenever someone said MMA is more effective than boxing, that they are referring to both styles being tested against one another in a one-on-one, unarmed, combative context. I repeat, an unarmed, combative context. Attention all incomprehensive boxers. When someone says MMA would win the real fight, what they really mean is MMA fighters possess a more versatile skill set, which gives them the upper hand in a real fight. Even if that fight includes weapons and gang assaults, you dumb fucks. So can someone please explain to me why the hell boxers feel they need to go on desperate tangents about the usage of guns and knives and glass bottles being real fights whenever they hear that MMA is more effective in a real fight? It's like, yo, are you really that shook? Are you really that scared that you think the only way for a boxer to stand a chance against MMA is to use explosives and pipes and sticks and shit? If anything, it's a compliment to MMA. I mean, yo, you really gotta use a fucking bat to beat a... Hey, it's just a compliment to MMA. Yo, you don't ever hear no MMA fighter saying shit like, man, if a boxer stepped to me in a real fight, I'ma shoot his ass. Man, I'ma get my boys, man, we gonna stab his ass. And the squad gonna handle his ass. My guys, you don't ever hear MMA fighters saying shit like that because they know that they don't need no fucking weapon or ghoul squad to beat your ass. Hey boxers, I'ma fill you in on something. If you have to use a knife or a gun in order to beat an MMA fighter in a real fight, it means that MMA is the superior form of unarmed combat, you one-dimensional dumbasses. And for the record, idiots, MMA fighters can also grab knives and sticks too. Shit, if they can beat your ass without a stick, of course they can beat your ass with one. Before the rise of MMA, whenever people referred to boxing as a real fight, boxers never disputed it. Whenever someone said boxing is a real fight, boxers never regurgitated cliches about guns and knives to try to tarnish the legitimacy of boxing. So why do they do it with MMA? Why is it that whenever the debate regarding the effectiveness of MMA versus boxing in a real fight comes up, pugilists are the first ones to bring weapons into the equation? When a guy bashes another guy's skull in with a bat or fires 10 bullets in the face of an adversary during a street altercation, most boxers would call that bitch shit. You know what I'm saying, man? That's some pussy shit, man. You know what I'm saying? So why isn't that same logic employed when you talk that gun-slinging gangster shit to MMA fighters? Why isn't it pussy shit when you run for your little guns and pipes when you see an MMA fighter? Oh, it's okay to use Glocks and broomsticks on people you know can kick your ass, but it's pussy shit if someone uses those same weapons on you. Mental Warfare 101, man. Mental Warfare 101. I know. Boxers know deep down, despite the fact that pure boxers will always have that puncher's chance, that the risk just ain't worth it. That the puncher's chance is just a sugar-coated way of saying, yeah, the MMA fighter technically has more ways to win, thus the advantage. But I'm going to put all of my prayers in hitting the lotto and landing that one big punch. To bank on the puncher's chance shows you really aren't that confident in your unarmed fighting skills. Amazing how whenever the topic regarding which form of fighting is more practical for real fights comes up, boxers get real stupid. As if they don't know what the fundamental point of the discussion is. I know boxing is a sport filled with street urchins and thugs that can barely read Cat in the Hat, but surely they aren't this stupid. Attention all jackasses! Message from the black hole! We all know that real fights include guns, knives, fighting, gang attacks, magical wands, laser beams, Kamehameha waves, your whole nine, we get it. Duh! But that's not the fundamental point of the debate. Even if you want to bring weapons into the equation, MMA fighters still have the stronger skill set. If you make 50 MMA fighters fight 50 boxers, way more MMA fighters will mop the floor with boxers than the other way around. So if real fight is going to continue to be used in the world of combat sports, then MMA has easily earned that title on account of simply having far less rules than any other combat sport out there. And speaking of combat sport, I think it's very important to emphasize the distinction between combat sport and real combat. With regard to sports, MMA is the sport of unarmed fighting. Boxing is simply the sport of unarmed punching. Now, to take a slight turn from the point I will eventually get back to, I saw an interview with Brooklyn's own Paulie Malignaggi flat out bragging about the sport of boxing being more dangerous. You gotta have balls to box, bro. You gotta have balls. That's why people die in this shit, bro. They die. My apologies to all my Brooklynites for my shitty attempt at a Brooklyn accent. But the irony behind Uncle Paulie's bragging is back when MMA was underground and struggling to get televised, mouth-foaming critics, including boxers, were complaining about MMA being too violent and too barbaric.
Oh, too violent, no class. Nothing short of human cockfighting, Watson.
But now that sports scientists have confirmed that the sport of boxing is actually far more dangerous than the sport of MMA, boxers like Malignaggi want to brag about boxing being more dangerous and flat out deadly. It's like, yo, which one is it? You punch drunk hypocrites? First, you denounce MMA for being barbaric, yet brag about boxing being more deadly. The very arguments you manipulative critics used in an attempt to invalidate and denounce MMA, you also use to praise and glorify boxing. You may have noticed that I emphasize on the word sport whenever I refer to MMA and boxing. The sports of MMA and boxing are completely different than MMA and boxing as raw, unregulated, combative art forms. While yes, boxing is the more dangerous sport due to the repeated headshots and limited options to stop your opponent or decrease the chances of being hurt, which is essentially what self-defense is even all about. MMA on the street is still more dangerous than boxing on the street. Yes, in MMA there's no standing 8 count. Yes, in MMA there's a referee to stop you from beating the person's face in, choking them to death, or breaking a limb. But what do you think if a boxer gets cornered in an alley with a polished MMA fighter by himself? What do you think will happen when that strap, lead pipe, or switchblade ain't on deck? Or if you simply can't get your hands on them quick enough? What do you think will happen when it's just mano y mano, bro? At a dead end of a dark alley. Just men fighting with their bare hands. Which style do you honestly think is more deadly in that situation? MMA or boxing? Yo, all this talk about guns and outnumbering people is because you just can't fight, boy. You can't fight, my guy. But since you fucks want to keep using retarded ass arguments to validate your case, I say get 50 of the best MMA fighters and 50 of the best boxers, lock them in a room with knives and bats, and let them fight to the death. Whichever team kills off the entire other team is the winner. You know that if there were 100 fights between MMA fighters and boxers, and you had to put your money on who you think would come out victorious in most of those fights, you would low-key put your money on them MMA fighters. But Pariah, what about a gun? Yo, what the fuck? Like I said, bro. Yo, Pariah, what about a gun? Like I said, if you can't swing it off without that thing on you, it means you just can't fight, my guy. You can't fight. At least not without a weapon against an MMA fighter, you can't. PSA for boxers worldwide. If you claim boxing is the more efficient style of fighting, but immediately talk about guns, shanks, and magical wands during a real fight, it means that MMA is the superior form of fighting. Man, fuck that, man. I'm gonna grab my magical wand and Avada Kedavra his ass on some Harry Potter shit, man. If he put his legs around my fucking man, yo, like, yo, dog. Like, yo, dog. Really? Relax, bro. It's just a fight, my man. It's just a fight, my man. Listen, if you need weapons to throw down, cool. Do what you gotta do, because ultimately, in a real fight, the goal is to win. I get that. But if you're a boxer talking shit about MMA, and need weapons to beat an MMA fighter ass, any argument you make against the validity of MMA is null and void. I mean, seriously, why the fuck even bring weapons into the debate? Hell, if I give my little 8-year-old sister an AK-47 and she blows your motherfucking head off, does that mean girls are truly stronger than men? Generally speaking. Nah. It just means that luckily she had a fucking gun to level the fucking playing field, because she knew whatever unarmed fighting skills she possessed, it wasn't enough to overcome yours. The whole this style versus that style debate becomes irrelevant when you start bringing fucking explosives and shit. Like, what the hell, dude? So boxers, if you're gonna use shanks and shit as a way to defend yourself against MMA, cool. But just admit that it's only because you know MMA has the upper hand in an unarmed fighting situation, which ultimately means MMA is superior. But Pariah, what about Ray Mercer? What about Ray Mercer versus Tim Sylvia? And what about him? Duh. I think we all know that there are rare exceptions to everything under the sun. But generally speaking, a 6'2" basketball player has an advantage over a 5'7" basketball player. You see where I'm going with this? But what about Ray? But what about Ray Mercer, man? Look, you stupid motherfucker! Yeah. The old puncher's chance came through for Mr. Ray Mercer. But the better question is, could Mr. Mercer do it again? And more importantly, how many times could he do it? I'm sorry, but when you knock somebody out in 10 seconds, then go on to get your ass kicked by a rookie Kimbo Slice in your next fight, it leaves the question of, was it luck? When scientists, analysts, and various research specialists are testing a theory or the consistency and validity of something, do they conduct one experiment or do they conduct several? You test for consistency while still leaving room for error because nothing is perfect, douches and douchebags of the world. Oh yeah, I forgot, I'm talking to bonehead boxers, not intellectual researchers and rational thinkers. Sure, Ray Mercer knocked out Tim Sylvia in 9 seconds. But the irony is he ended up getting choked the fuck out by Kimbo Slice, who wasn't even a legitimate MMA fighter or a boxer at the time. Mind you, Ray Mercer also got his ass kicked by Keo Mori and knocked the fuck out by Remy Monjaski in the only 2 kickboxing matches he ever had. Hey yo, so much for the Ray Mercer card. See what happens when the sun doesn't shine on the dog's ass in less than 10 seconds of a real fight? See what happens when boxers actually have to showcase what they're really made of in bouts with less rules? They lose. And if Ray Mercer fought Tim Sylvia again in an alley, he'd lose. Just like if James Toney fought Couture again in an alley, he'd lose. Just like if Floyd Mayweather fought Conor McGregor in an alley, he'd lose. Just like if Ellie Setback fought Ariel Helwani in an alley, he'd lose. You get the point. I'm serious, government. If you listening, legislate a 100-man fight to the death. Yo, I can see it now. 50 of the best boxers and 50 of the best MMA guys. One tiny desert, fight to the death. See who comes out on top. Winner take all, and this whole damn discussion is over. Hey boxers, here's a secret. If you need a firearm or a chainsaw or whatever fear makes you think you need in order to beat an MMA fighter in a real fight, MMA by default is superior, period. Because to drive my redundant rant home, if your boxing was more superior to MMA, you just use boxing to whip an MMA motherfucker's ass. But you can't, because boxing is inferior. That of the black hole recognized real. And we all know MMA is that real shit. If this message resonates with your soul, consider refuge in the black hole.